A quick message before we get on with the podcast today. We're delighted to let you know that 101 Top Property Tips is going to be live to the world, live to the market on Wednesday, the 15th of July. We've got over 50 contributors to this book, people that have been in property for years and years and years with a wealth of experience, and everyone's teamed up together to provide various top property tips. The idea being that this helps you and it helps us, helps everyone to learn from the mistakes that other people have made. Now, whether you're a seasoned professional, whether you're just getting started in property, this book's going to have everything that you can think of, from tips on due diligence to tips on dealing with builders, dealing with architects. Wednesday, 15th of July, 101 Top Property Tips is going to be available to the world. You can buy it on Amazon, paperback and the Kindle version. So mark that date in your calendar. And now, on with the show. Just before we roll into this Expertcast with Michael K. Cobb, CEO and co-founder of ECI Development, just to let you know, as a word of warning, there's a lot of moving between the word property and real estate. For those that are not familiar, real estate is the American term for property. So there's a lot of interchanging that Mike and I both do between property and real estate. It is the same thing. This conversation is wide ranging. We both go off topic about completely different things. At some point, we always try and rein it in around international developments. What Mike and ECI Development have been able to achieve and what they are achieving and working on at the moment, I think is phenomenal. It's great to have Mike on as a guest. And just a little bit of background about Mike. So at the height of a successful career in the computer industry, Mike left to pursue more pioneering opportunities in the emerging real estate markets of Central America. In 1996, he and his business partner founded a company, Exotic Kai International, to provide loans to North Americans purchasing properties in Belize, Honduras, and throughout the region. As the need for capital outstripped the supply, the mortgage company was converted to an international bank under the jurisdiction of Belize. It continues to provide mortgage services, but has expanded its services to encompass the full realm of financial products. From there, Mike and ECI Development have done projects in Belize, they have done projects in Nicaragua, they have done projects in Costa Rica. We do deep dive into the processes of how they are done, and a lot of it is to do with mindset, and a lot of it is to do with building a network and behind the scenes. It's a wide-ranging conversation, really, really informative. It's a bit of a twist for you, aware that we normally talk about UK property market, but this is completely different. So without further ado, enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Michael K. Cobb, co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of ECI Development. Mike, welcome to the show, International Real Estate Developments. This is going to be awesome with so much content. Can't wait for this, absolutely brilliant. But before real estate, what were you doing and what made you get into real estate?
Sure, Rob. Thanks for having me on the program. I'm excited, looking forward to the conversation. You know, when I graduated from college in the very northwest corner of Pennsylvania, it was right after the economic recession of the 1980s. In fact, the unemployment in my county, the official unemployment was about 20%. So right after college, I graduated. I went to the Washington, D.C. area. It seems to be somewhat recession-proof. And I had a degree in political science, so I thought, oh, gee, that makes sense. I'll go to Washington, D.C., get into politics somehow. But the reality was it was a big turnoff. And I ended up getting into sales just totally by accident, and very fortunately got into sales in the computer business, but on the PC side of things. This was 1986. The personal computer, the PC, had just really started to come out. We were selling XTs and 286s, if you can remember back that far. And so it was really just luck that I get in on the PC side of things at the right time. And truly this period of time is what I call a revolutionary period in the computer industry. And by revolutionary, I really mean that it was a time where these old ideas, the mainframes, people remember the mainframe computers, giant computers in the basements of buildings, and 15, 20 really smart, geeky guys, running them, right? And maybe you had a terminal in your office a dumb terminal where you could type your data or whatever, but the real computing power was done by these mainframe computers in the basements of buildings. The PC revolution was truly a revolution because you had these desktop computers sitting on people's desks, and you had these widely varied opinions. The people who ran the mainframes, the big mainframe companies, the DECs, the Honeywells, the companies that were too big to fail. IBM was certainly a big part of it. They were saying that no way are these desktop computers ever going to amount to anything. But then on the PC side of things, you had the Michael Dells, you had back then the Gateway 2000s, you had Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and other people writing the software for these things. And they were saying, wow, this is the wave of the future. So it was really unknown. Well, we all know now, looking back, 30, 40 years in hindsight, we know that this was revolutionary because the PCs took off and are now pretty much 95% of the computer business. Yes, we still have mainframes, but they're few and far between. They're in very specialized applications. Well, revolutionary times in the computer business really gave me a deep understanding of what revolution means. It means opportunity. For the people on the PC side of things, again, which I was very fortunate to be a part of, it meant incredible booming opportunity, new ideas, new concepts, new products, this very fast changing environment that was very exciting to be a part of. And we know that millionaires and billionaires were made on the PC side of things, while on the desktop side of things, we saw big Burroughs, Honeywells, the DECs, NEC Corporation, a lot of these big, huge behemoth computer companies going out of business. So it really precipitated the fallout on one side, but the incredible economic and not just economic, but performance. We look at today's performance by people, right? The capabilities, the productivity we have as workers today is phenomenally enhanced by these things called personal computers. And it's also given us incredible freedom in ways that we never would have had if we were stuck with mainframe computers and dumb terminals linked by cables to some big computer system in the basement. Today, we know that we can grab our laptop and we can go and work from anywhere. So the productivity gains have been just incredible. I don't know how many thousands of percent that we're better off because of it. But we're also better off in some social ways, freedom being a big one that's pretty important for society. And maybe we can get into this later, but this COVID pandemic, this coronavirus is really stripping away some of the last vestiges of the industrial society. We certainly saw post-industrial kinds of transformations in industry and the workplace in many ways, with again the PCs and people being able to do a lot of things that they couldn't do previously. But some of the old institutions, education, for example, were kind of stuck in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Frederick Winslow Taylor model of desk in a school, all in a straight line. School starts with the bell, you change classes with the bell, you go home with the bell. And in the workplace, you had people coming to an office. There were certain times that people took coffee breaks or lunch breaks. Again, very industrial, kind of a geared towards an assembly line type of mentality and production. But this COVID thing has really kind of shaken those last vestiges, both in education and in many industries, to say, you know what? We have the freedom to be able to work from anywhere, to learn from anywhere. Yes, we're missing our social engagements. We're missing the chance to be with others as part of a work or an educational experience, but they're not necessary specifically for that educational or work experience. And the PCs, let us do that too. So I definitely went far afield there, Rob. I'm sorry. I definitely went way out there on chasing a rabbit. But coming back to the idea of being in the computer business for a number of years, about 13 years, very, very fortunate, did well, and then ended up, getting out of that about 1994, 95, part-time and full-time, moving into real estate development in 1998. So, wow, that was a long rabbit run. I'm sorry, Rob.
I knew this would be a great episode. And that's just an awesome way to start. But you touched on a couple of interesting things there, and just to give an example of people having sort of this fear in the workplace. I mean, my brother's a facilities manager in London, and he's been working from home for quite a while now as a result of COVID-19. So he's very fortunate in the fact that he's not been affected in terms of his work. But he's also mentioned that he's only actually had to go to the office twice, I think it was, 2 or 3 times. He's not had to visit sites, and everything's running as smoothly as possible. So I suppose there is that fear, isn't there, of if I'm not at my desk, if I'm not doing my work in my office, then I can't do it anywhere else. It's like, well, yeah, you can work from home, but there is that social element to it, of course. And some people are going to be in worse situations than others. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, and some jobs do require us to be physically present in a location. Any kind of assembly line or service work. I mean, if you're a cook in a restaurant, or you work in a retail store, or and we're having some issues here in the United States right now with our meat processing, right? I mean, you've got to, or any kind of agriculture, right? You've got to produce the goods, right? You have to process the goods, you have to put them in containers, and you have to ship them. All of those things do require physical presence by an individual. But many of the roles, like your brother or my role, as a chief executive officer, and many of our sales team and operational people, don't need to be physically present to do their job. And what's interesting, you mentioned this about your brother, and I think this was in the fear, was for many decades, at least 3-4 decades, since we've really had the PCs, we've had the technological capacity to work from anywhere, both people, the employees, and the companies, the employers, had a fear. Could we really do this? Could we work from home? Would we be as productive? Would our employees be as productive if we let them work from home, or would they be binge watching Game of Thrones, or whatever our fears as an employer might have been? But the employees also shared a fear. Can I work from home? What will that be like with my kids around, my dog, my family? Am I responsible enough? Will my employer trust me enough to continue to pay me to work from home? And these fears have really, in large ways, been proven out to be almost groundless. I'm sure there's some people watching Game of Thrones and some people having some adjustments to working at home, but by and large, most people have been able to make this transition successfully. And this is truly a bellwether. This is a moment in time that we are going to look back from many different perspectives. And from my perspective, as someone who develops real estate outside of the United States and Canada, outside of Europe, in Central and South America and the Caribbean, we are going to look back at this time period and say, this was a sage change. This was a sea change of concept, where if I can work from my home in, I don't pick, whatever, Hull, England, or London, England, or Fairfax, Virginia, and I don't have to go to my office, there's no reason I can't work from Belize, former British Honduras, to tie it into England, right? I can work from British Honduras, which is now Belize. I can work from Costa Rica. I can work from Argentina. Or for folks in England, I can work, if I know you guys travel a lot over to the Asian side. I can work from Thailand. I can work from Malaysia. I can work from the Seychelles. It doesn't matter. So if I can work remotely, I can work from anywhere. And what that does is it begins to open up the ideas and possibilities where people will begin to imagine, wow, if I can work from my home in England, I can work from these wonderful locations where I'm going to experience far better weather in most cases. And again, in most cases, a far lower cost of living. And in, again, many cases, a much higher quality of life. And this will be a precipitating event for a lot of people to make moves overseas because they know they can. Their employers will now trust them to be able to do their jobs, and they will do their jobs remotely. And so this, again, big pivotal time in history that we will all look back on. And again, different industries are going to look back on it with different thoughts. But in our industry, this will be a moment in time where people who have always wanted to move overseas and do things overseas, work overseas, be that digital nomad, take an early, not an early retirement, but people think, I've got to wait till I retire to go live overseas. Well, no, you can actually go do the last 10 years of your job overseas and enjoy this lifestyle experience 10 years sooner. So again, big moment in time, big change that we're right on the cusp of it, and it's starting to happen.
You mentioned there about moving abroad, etc. Quickly direct people that are listening to this. If you go back to the Property Nomads episode 99 with Mikhail Thorpe, escape artist, author of #1 Amazon bestseller as well. Go and check that episode out. That covers that subject in depth, and that was awesome to do that episode as well. Mike, I'm curious to know that at the height of a successful career in the computer industry, so everything's going well, etc., what made you then decide to leave that behind to then go into real estate?
Yeah, good question, Rob. I guess it was a couple things. One, I in 1994, a buddy of mine called me up, and he and I had gone to college together. He went off to law school, became an attorney. I got into computer sales. He and I stayed in touch. We saw each other from time to time, and it's funny. He called me up one day. I remember it was a Tuesday, and this was 1994. And he said, "Hey," my nickname in college was Cobbster. He goes, "Hey, Cobbster, what are you doing this weekend?" I'm like, "I don't know. What are you thinking?" He goes, "Why don't you come to Belize with me?" And I'm sitting at my desk. This is long before Google. There's nothing going on. And I say to him, I go, Joel, absolutely. And then I start thinking to myself, where's Belize? I have no idea, because again, when I was in high school and studied this stuff, it was British Honduras, right? Although I'm not sure I could have placed that on the map either. But anyway, Belize became Belize in 1981. That's when they got their independence. They're still part of the colony crown system, Commonwealth system, but they went from colony to Commonwealth system in 1981. But yeah, so this is 1994. I'm like, yeah, man, let's go. I'm going to Belize. And then I, ask him, like, where is it? Whatever. So we went to Belize, and again, this was really the heyday of my computer experience. I was doing well. I was vice president of a manufacturing company. We were just, kicking it. I mean, this was really when the PC industry was just gangbusters. And so I went to Belize with no intention of anything other than just a fun weekend. And we came to this little island off the coast of Belize. It's part of Belize. It's called Ambergris Caye, for one afternoon. Like, we were in Belize City. He was doing all of his work stuff. And he actually sets up asset protection structures for physicians. That's his primary line of business is asset protection work, and second residencies and stuff that you mentioned that Mikkel probably talked about as well on Escape Artist. But we went to Belize City. We went out to Ambergris Caye for an afternoon on Saturday, I think, and we flew home on Sunday. And I said to Joel, I said, man, the next time you come to Belize, let me know. Give me a little more heads up. Let's come stay a couple more days, and we'll go back out to the island. Because you could go, we went fishing, we went snorkeling. It's a beautiful, but back then, like, this little tiny island, there was nothing going on. The streets were all sand streets. There might have been 2,000 people living on the island at the time. And I thought to myself, this is like Key West, Florida, or the Turks and Caicos, or the British Virgin Islands, 25 years ago. I thought, this is incredible. And so whatever, I don't know, a couple months later, we go back again, and we found a couple condos, side-by-side condos that were for sale. And so we actually put an offer in on the two condos, and we bought them, and very quickly started, renting them out, right? I mean, my first rental property, I know you have a lot of folks that do properties and rental properties. It's kind of interesting. My first rental property, period, was offshore, overseas in Belize. And so we bought these condos. We started doing but it was before Airbnb, anything like that. But we started running classified ads in the papers. We had people, coming down. We knew friends, family, go stay in our condo, and it was fine, and it worked, and we did pretty well with that. But what happened in late '94 into the spring of '95? It's an interesting story. Was Joel is my business partner's name. Joel and I were sitting by the pool at the condos, and the developer comes by, and if you can imagine, say a horseshoe shape of buildings, right? The open end of the horseshoes, the ocean. In the middle of the horseshoes, a pool. There were 11 buildings around this pool. So they all looked, out across the pool to the ocean. So all 11 buildings, 44 condos, 4 units in each building. They all had beautiful ocean views, either, out across the pool or right in front of the ocean. And he had started another horseshoe. And our condos were the 2 first floor condos in the second building in. The next building, the third building was, I don't know, half, 3/4 built. The next building was, foundations and some walls coming up out of the ground. And then the next building was basically a hole in the ground with nothing going on. And over the course of, 6-8 months, we literally saw no work happening on these 3 buildings. And so we were sitting by the pool. The developer came by, Jim was his name, and Jim, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And hey, what are you doing here, man? Why aren't you working on these buildings next to ours in the next group of buildings? Because obviously, it's a beautiful location, all these wonderful things. You've got a great resort here. And he said, because I have to finance most of my sales. And, when we had purchased our condos, we had made full payment, and we'd negotiated a pretty good discount. I think we got a 20% discount off the asking price because we were willing to make a full payment, 100% of what the offer was. And so we probed a little further with Jim. We're like, Jim, what do you mean? He goes, well, a lot of Americans and Canadians come down here, and in I think our condos were 150,000. And he says, but a lot of people don't have 150,000. Maybe they have 30,000, 50,000 to put down, but they need financing for the rest. And we're like, yeah, so? He says, well, the banks down here don't finance foreigners, and your banks up in the States and in Canada, they won't finance on a piece of collateral down here in Belize. And so I either have to tell people to, forget it, or I have to offer developer financing. And so he said what he'd been doing was collecting, say, 50,000 down and financing 100,000 for these buyers. But the problem is that he couldn't build buildings with the financing. Like he tied up all of his money, right? Financing people. And so we very quickly got to the point in the conversation where we said, hey, Jim, would you be willing to sell us the paper that you're carrying, the financed part? And if you would you, sell it to us for that same kind of, 20% discount? He didn't bat an eye. He yes. I mean, he would just like, yes. And so we sat there for a while. We talked a little bit more. He went away. And then Joel and I developed a business plan to start a little mortgage company in Belize. This was, again, maybe January or February of 1995, where we put some money together. I went out to a bunch of my friends in the computer business. He went out to a bunch of his clients, physicians, and we put together just around a couple $1 million, just under a couple $1 million. And we went back down to Ambergris Caye and we bought paper from developers, from Jim and from many others, because it was a common problem. The problem for these folks, and in fact, we're going to talk about some of this stuff later, I think, in our when we drill down into the 15 questions. But a big concept that the 15 questions is based on is we don't know what we don't know. And what Jim didn't know was that there was no financing. He came to Belize. He had, I'll make up a number, he had a couple $1 million in his pocket. He bought a piece of property. He built the first 3, 4, 5 buildings. He sold a bunch of them. He built the next 3, 4, 5. Some people financed, some people paid full. He got to the point where he'd kind of used up all of his money, and now he had a couple $1 million in paper out there financing people who bought condos from him, but he didn't have any more cash to keep building or do the next part of the development. He didn't know what he didn't know. He didn't know that the banks in Belize would not give foreigners loans, and he didn't think about the fact that banks in the US wouldn't lend money on collateral. He just assumed that there was a financing mechanism in Belize. Well, there wasn't. And he got stuck. And so what we did is we started our little mortgage company. We bought a bunch of paper, and that business was really kind of a trip once every 2-3 months down to the island to buy some paper, check on our mortgages. But it was really a very simple, easy business. And in 1998, we had a foreclosure opportunity in one of the resorts where we had bought some paper. I had kind of gotten to the point in the computer business where it was moving from hardware to more of a telephony based, and the internet was just kind of, the DARPA net was out there, the internet. We had, I can't remember what they're called, not chat rooms, but prior to like the internet, where you could really communicate, there were, I guess, like chat rooms or something. Anyway, so these things were just coming online. And what I realized is I was going to have to retool. And we know from many sage speakers and writers that it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something. We have to be a practitioner for 10,000 hours before we become a master. And if we work 2,000-hour years, which is 40-hour weeks, it takes us 5 years to become a master. If we work 80-hour weeks, we can kick it in about 2.5 years. But no matter how you shake it, you got 2-3 years, and at kind of the pace I work, to become a master at something. And I thought, you know what? I can either become a master at this telephony stuff, or I can become a master at financing and resort development in Central America, which quite honestly was far more interesting based on my political science background. And I thought, well, if I'm going to spend 10,000 hours doing and learning a whole new industry, a whole new business, I want to learn about something I care about and I'm passionate about, I find interesting. And so in 1998, I left the computer business and went full-time into our mortgage company and then our resort development business in Belize. And from there, it expanded on and on and on. But that was really how it happened. It was hearing about a need, seeing a need in the marketplace for financing for North Americans who wanted to buy property in Belize, and figuring out a way to serve that need and serve those consumers. That was really the nucleus of my launch and into the region, but also the nucleus of our launch as both a finance company, which is now, by the way, a full disclosure, we're a bank. We became a bank in 2003. Our mortgage company did. I still serve on the board of directors and the management committee, but we hired professional bankers to come run that business. I'm not a banker. But the business has continued to do very, very well, serving North American and European clients. It doesn't matter, non-local clients, and providing financing in the region to people who need it. But then we also saw opportunities to work in the development space, the resort space, again, looking for needs in the marketplace that were not being served or were being served poorly or not very well, and figuring out ways to do it better for a North American client. And that's the long version of the story, Rob.
Just to clarify, you mentioned a couple of times buy some paper. Can you just clarify for people that might not understand what that means? What do you mean when you say buy some paper?
Okay. Yeah, Rob, thank you. Sorry for not saying that. Basically, when somebody finances, so let me use Jim as an example. This developer, Jim, would build a condo and he would sell it for $150,000. The client would maybe put $50,000 down, and Jim would take a note back for the $100,000. Maybe it was a 10-year note at 10% interest or whatever it was, and the client would pay that note over the 10-year period. And at the end of the 10 years, they would have paid it off and they would own the condo outright at that point. But the paper is that note, is that interest-bearing mortgage note that Jim was holding. That's the paper. And so what we would do is that, let's say that Jim wrote the loan, he took $50,000 from the client, financed the client for $100,000. We would come along if it was day one, and we would say, okay, Jim, you have a $100,000 note with Mr. Johnson. we will give you $80,000 today, cash. You give us the $100,000 note, then we would service that note with Mr. Johnson for the next 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, then, we would release the collateral, which was the condo. Mr. Johnson would get his condo, but over the 10 years, we would collect those mortgage payments. The nice thing is we both received the coupon, which was the 10% interest, but we also were able to buy that note or that paper at a substantial discount. So it was and is a very, very good business even today.
That's incredibly smart.
Well, yeah, it was really seeing the opportunity in the marketplace. I'd like to say it was smart, but I think it was really more luck, Rob. I mean, just right here's a problem that this developer is facing, and we had the ability to help him solve his problem. But yeah, I mean, there were a lot of smart people, and now that it's a bank, there are a lot of smart people that run it, because banking is a very, very specific business. But at the time, it was just how can we help solve this problem? So yeah.
And that's awesome. And from a point of view of, you're in the USA, you go down to Belize, you have a good time, then you go back, see some condos for sale, then you go and buy them. Now, to a lot of, I would imagine, to a lot of people listening to this who are either from the UK or are operating property, real estate, within the UK, they're probably listening to this thinking, well, that's bonkers that you've just gone to a complete different country. You knew probably not a lot about, British Honduras, as you say at the time, now Belize, and you go and splash out 150,000 cash on a condo. A lot of people are going to just think that's absolutely bonkers. You done no other research on it. You just thought this is great, or had you learned from what you mentioned about British Virgin Islands from 25 years earlier? What went through your mind when you just bought that first condo?
Sure. The look, no matter what you're buying, there's risk, right? If you buy a piece of property anywhere in the world, if you're from the UK and you buy a property in the UK, there's risk. Some of the risks are not so great. I mean, title, for example, is in England and the United States and Canada. A lot of that stuff was worked out over a century ago, right? There's title's pretty good. We don't have to worry so much about that. But there's market risk. We buy a property and all of a sudden there's a recession, or we buy it in a community and there's a big factory closure, and all of a sudden there's no demand for the product anymore. So the property we thought would cash flow doesn't cash flow. So there are lots of things that can be considered risks when you buy property. It's just that when you buy property overseas, the risks are different, and understanding that, and in fact, the 15 questions, again, we're going to talk about that another day, but the 15 questions, we don't know what we don't know, is again the fundamental tenet of the 15 questions. And by the way, there are two. We don't know what we don't know, and we need to forget what we think we know, right? Because assumptions are very dangerous too. And assumptions let us function in life pretty well. If we had to think about every single thing that was going on around us all the time, it'd be hard to get anything done, right? We'd be like driving, for example. When we first start driving, we're paying attention to everything, every little noise. We're steering, like we're concentrating on actually steering the wheel, and we're looking at our rear, right? And we can't do anything else. But after we've been driving for a while, we can listen to the radio. We're not supposed to talk on the cell phones, but we do. We can do other things because we have some assumptions, right? We kind of know what the car sounds like. We know if there's nobody right in front of us or nobody right behind us, that things are, kind of normal. We don't have to think about that stuff. So assumptions make our life a lot easier, but they also make our life, when we do certain things like buy property overseas, far more risky. If we come to, let's pick on Belize, for example, right? And I like Belize for a lot of reasons, and it was a good place to learn because it is part of the Commonwealth. It does use common law, which again, in the United States and Canada, except for Quebec in Canada, which is a civil law province, And actually, one of the states in the United States, Louisiana, is a civil law state. But all the other provinces in Canada, all the other states in the United States, and in the UK, we use common law. The other thing is, again, English is the official language of Belize. So all the contracts are in English. The format is something we're familiar with. So there were a lot of familiarities. As a place to take your first step overseas, Belize was a great place to do it. Now, we've since begun to work in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, and so we've moved into civil law environments. We've also moved into Spanish language environments, which changed the game. It makes it far more complicated. But to stay with your question and the Belize example, we don't know what we don't know, so we need to be, humble about that. We also need to forget what we think we know. We can't bring assumptions because it may not be the same. Yes, it's English common law. Yes, it's English language, but it's Belize. It's a foreign country, so there will be some things that are different. Maybe not radically different because, again, common law and English, but probably different. And so if we don't know what we don't know and we need to forget what we think we know, if you take the synthesis of those two concepts, you end up with humility. And Rob, to answer your question very specifically, we were very humble in our approach. We asked a lot of questions. We did a lot of due diligence. I think we ended up with 3 separate attorneys during the process. One we did not use. We interviewed, we learned a lot, but we didn't like them particularly. And 2 attorneys that we ended up hiring and using in the process of the purchase. We knew we didn't understand it. We knew that we needed to take our time and be careful. And so we did. And so, right, I think a lot of people would say we were bonkers. And I don't know, I look back on that and I think to myself, yeah, crazy like a fox, because, you don't get many opportunities to go back in time. The concept of the time machine is powerful. And so to be on an island, Ambergris Caye, Belize, again, a British Commonwealth country, English, common law, all of those kinds of things that we see in the British Virgin Islands, the Turks and Caicos, the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, Bermuda, each of these former British colony and Commonwealth countries have gone through a process of development, a progress of development, a path of progress. And these events kind of follow generally in a certain pattern. They repeat themselves. And so when you look at, and Bermuda is certainly the one that's the most further along at this point in this process. You go back and you look at Bermuda. So Ambergris Caye might have been Bermuda, 50, 75 years ago, whereas the Turks and Caicos or Cayman Islands might have been Belize, 20 years ago, and the British Virgin Islands 30 years ago, or something like that, and Bahamas maybe 40 years ago. You can see how a country progresses. You can see what happens in terms of development, financial services, whether it's asset protection kinds of things, trust legislation, banking legislation. Then you see the tourism follow with the arrival of the very first cruise ships. You see the arrival of certain airlines coming out of the United States, certainly in this part of the world, the major carriers, Delta, American, United, back then Continental was flying, a lot of these mergers now. And then you start to see the cruise ships come, and then you start to see discount airlines, like in our case, it would be Southwest Airlines. In Canada, it would be WestJet. In the UK, it would be someone like EasyJet, right? You've got big carriers that establish the routes, and once the routes and the tourism is established, EasyJet opens up and offers very, very inexpensive, cheap flights. And so this path of progress, this path of development, these things happen in fairly repeatable patterns. And so to be able to go to a country like Belize back in 1994 and 1995 and catch it at the very front end of this pattern, and then look to the countries like Bermuda, Bahamas, BVI, Turks, Caymans, and go, wow, here's what happened over there over a 10, 15, 20, 30-year period. These things are very likely to happen again here in Belize. Let's just put ourselves in front of this stuff. And that's really what we did, Rob. We just kind of put ourselves in front of what we thought would come next based on historical patterns that had repeated themselves over and over and over again throughout the Caribbean in other British colony Commonwealth countries. And largely we've been right about it. You never get it 100% right. So you've got to maintain humility. You've got to maintain flexibility. You got to have your ear to the ground all the time. But in sort of a big picture way, to be able to look at this and go, wow, this is a time machine. And in the example that I give in a lot of my presentations, especially ones where I'm in front of an audience, a physical audience, and I just simply say, if H.G. Wells showed up right here, right now, and I usually jump off the stage, right in front of the stage, and I go, with this time machine, boom, right here. And he invited everyone in this room to come up front, bring one check, climb onto his time machine. He's going to set the dial back for 20 years. He's going to let us all have the rest of today to run around and make one investment with our check and get back on the time machine at 5 o'clock, and he'll bring us right back to this exact moment. How many people are coming back to this moment at 5 o'clock today far wealthier than they are right now? And, anybody who doesn't put up their hand, I usually pick on them and I say, come on, you sleep over there? Like, of course you're coming back wealthier. To go to Belize in 1994, 1995, or to go to Belize today, you know what? There are now 3 paved streets on the island of Ambergris Caye. There is one open branded hotel. It's a Curio by Hilton. We're still so far back on this time machine in Belize that, we still got lots of path of progress to run. And so for people who say, oh, I missed the Belize opportunity. Yeah, you missed the opportunity 25 years ago to get in, 25 years ago, but there's still a whole path of progress. Today, Belize is what the Cayman Islands was 20 years ago. Like it's always, the Belize will always be lagging Cayman Islands, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos by 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Pick the number, right? And so if we just simply understand that Belize is a time machine and we can get into it today, and we understand what's probably likely should mostly happen over the next decade, 2 or 3, and we figure out how to put ourselves in front of that, we're going to do very, very well. And maybe I am bonkers. To come back to your point about being bonkers, I've been called that by a lot of people. It takes, our mission statement for ECI, our development company, has a bunch of stuff: building affordable luxury product, blah 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 blah. And I shouldn't dismiss it; it's a great mission statement. But the last line sums it up. We build inspired residences for, and this is the key, adventurous souls. Rob, that's the thread that runs through all of our customers and our shareholders and the many, many people who do something overseas. And I'm guessing that number's about 1 in 10, honestly. It's about 1 in 10 of the general population who truly are adventurous souls. And the 9 out of 10, there's nothing bad about it. It's just they're not particularly adventurous, and they're not going to go overseas, and they're not going to buy property overseas. They're not even going to think about buying property overseas. But for the 1 out of 10 who have this adventurous soul, this adventurous spirit, this is the group that tend to be, doing the kinds of things like we did, adventuring out, visiting new places. Maybe, some of the first people to visit a destination that's not real popular yet. I love going places that aren't real popular. I mean, I went to Namibia recently. I've gone to Cambodia. I went to the far western reaches of China, where we were the only Caucasians this summer. So for me, being adventurous in many aspects, but I think this adventurousness, certainly gives possibility to opportunities that the folks who are less adventurous really never see, because they're just not putting themselves out there, or they're not willing to put themselves out there to look at something. Yes, the risk is greater, but if we do good due diligence, if we approach with a very, very humble mind and a humble heart to say, I don't really understand it. I need to ask a lot more questions. I need to spend more time. I need to walk a little slower. I need to understand that I don't know what I don't know. Then we can mitigate a lot of those risks up front and make really good decisions. But this concept of time machine, being able to put ourselves back in time is powerful. And that seems to be a major factor in the motivation of people buying property overseas.
Mike, well, thanks for that. To start with, I think that's incredibly insightful. So just if I can do a little summary just on what you said. So in a nutshell, what you're saying is that to me, it sounds like more or less of when you bought your first condo in Belize. It was a case of, number one, right place, right time, but number two, knowing what other places have been through previously. You mentioned BVI, Turks and Caicos, etc. Putting the two together and going, okay, well, there's an opportunity because it's happened before. Other cycles, before that. So it's happened before. It's probably going to happen again. A lot of due diligence. He said he spoke to 3 attorneys, asking a lot of questions, doing a lot of extra homework as such. You take the due diligence, you take the fact that it's a bit of right place, right time, and then all the, I'm just going to call it economical homework or research. You've put them together and gone, yeah, okay, I like this. This looks like this is going to work, and just went ahead and done it. That is perfect. But there's also a lot of, I know that's a really simple way of looking at it, but there's also a lot of key points that you mentioned, like do your homework, look at previous cycles, and that's how I'm seeing it from what you've explained.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated, right? There's the old saying that simple is not necessarily easy, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I'm a big fan of simple. Simple is really pretty important, but simple and easy are two different things. And so, yes, to keep it as simple as possible, but understanding that it probably will be challenging, and that and the other side of it is that there will be challenges that are unexpected or unheard of. And that's part of the adventure, and keeping an adventurous spirit, or I call it adventure eyes, so that when we're faced with challenges that kind of come out of the blue, or holy smokes, never thought of that, or sometimes you just scratch your head and you go, huh? So, right? You have to be ready for that, and you have to keep an appropriate attitude, which to me is the adventure eyes. See it as an adventure, see it as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to, overcome a challenge that you wouldn't have otherwise had to overcome. And truthfully, honestly, for many people, I think in the US and Canada especially, part of our diversification mentality is it's limited. Most people have stocks and bonds, and if they have a international portfolio, it means that they own, Nestle's stock or BMW stock through the New York Stock Exchange. So they own a German company and a Swiss company or something, right? But that's not real international diversification. Again, everything's in dollars, everything's in the US or Canada primarily. And so the importance of true international diversification. By the way, you all as Europeans really have a much better sense of true international diversification than US and Canadians do, just by the fact that it's easy to move about Europe and have investments that are broader than any one country. But in the US, to be able to say, hey, look, I'm going to take part of my portfolio, 5%, 10%, 15, 20, pick a number, but some small percent of my portfolio, and I'm going to invest it outside my home country is prudent. It is prudent. It's very prudent. Yes, there's different risk. I don't think it's more risk. I think it's different risk. And if we take our time, we do our due diligence, and we listen to professionals, we hire professionals, whether it's a lawyer or an accountant. We work with companies like ours that have been around for 24 years. This is our 24th year of business as the ECI development. We know what we're doing. We're pretty good at what we do. We've survived 3 downturns in the economy. We've certainly done well in the up cycles as well. But again, hiring professionals to help us in whatever capacity that is, we can mitigate those risks. And then by having some percentage of our portfolio outside our home country, outside our home currency, we've decreased our portfolio risk. That's the whole point of modern portfolio theory, is that the diversification of our assets reduces portfolio risk. Yes, it's a different risk if you have a property in Costa Rica or Panama or Belize or Cambodia or wherever, right? It's a different risk. But the fact that we have it as part of our property or investment portfolio actually reduces overall portfolio risk. And so again, not a lot of people are willing to take that step. Maybe it's 1 in 10. I don't know. Kind of in the U.S., it's about 1 in 10. U.S. and Canada. Canada is actually a little higher. It's almost 1 in 5. About 1 in 6 actually in Canada. U.S. about 1 in 10. I don't know what it would be for the U.K. But different cultures feel differently about it. It might be higher in the U.K. just because again, it is part of a European entity, I guess. Well, not anymore, but sorry.
Still is at the time of recording. Give it a little while, then it might not be. But yeah.
Anyway, but I mean, just philosophically, you're part of a you're part of a European community, whether you're officially part of a European community or not. So I think that the idea of British folks holding a French stock or a German stock or an Italian company, whatever it is, or owning a property in the south of Spain isn't as big a deal as it is for a U.S. to own a property outside the U.S. But I still think, well, in fact, let me ask, I'm going to turn the tables on you, Rob. Do you have any data about how many Brits own property outside of the U.K.? I'm curious. I'd just be curious if you know that.
Not off the top of my head, I don't. It's a good question. I'd have to Google that. I will for the. I know it's going to take a bit of time on the cast, but I'll do it anyway. How many Brits own property?
I'm guessing it's higher than 1 out of 10. That own property. I mean, the other thing you have to do is you have to sort it out for the people that actually own properties, like more than just their home, right? Because most people only own their home; they don't own another property. But if you look at the number of people who own a home, be it besides their own a property besides their home, then it's about 1 in 10 in the U.S. own a property outside the U.S. and about 1 in 6 in Canada. So
I'll have to come back. You stumped me on that. I'm going to have to come back to you on that. I will. Oh yeah, I'll come back to you on that. Fair play. Thanks for. I'll come back to you on that. I've made a note and I'll research it and let you know. In terms of moving the story forward a little bit, then in terms of. You're in Belize, you've started there, you're doing some great stuff in Belize, and as you mentioned, common law, British, ex-British colony, those sorts of things, that's fine. But in 2000, you then purchased 3.5 miles of Pacific beachfront in Nicaragua. So a few questions on that was, number one, what made you go over to Nicaragua? Number two, with everything you've just said, how did you then find the transition of going from English-speaking, common law side to Spanish-speaking? How did the company find that transition? And tell us a bit more about that development and some numbers, etc. If you can, that'd be superb.
Yeah, sure. Well, what we saw in Belize was and look, I'm trying to think back to numbers, but back in the late 90s, early 2000, but in the late 90s, if you had, I don't know, back then pounds to dollars were different, but if you had, $300,000-$400,000, you could buy a really, really nice product that met all of your expectations as a North American or as a European, right? If you had a couple £100,000, you could come to Belize and you could buy a really nice oceanfront condo, maybe 500,000 pounds. You could buy a beautiful oceanfront villa that was, world class. I mean, it was everything you wanted it to be. But if you had, 80,000 pounds, $150,000, something like that, you really settled. And we noticed that in our condos. And these were the kinds of things that we didn't know, and we didn't pick up on it. They weren't, deal breakers. But once we got into our condo, what we noticed was there was only one outlet in our living room. Our whole living room had it had two electrical outlets, right? But they're, right there, one above the other, right? So for the whole living room, there was one electrical outlet with two plugs. And so if you wanted to run lights around the room or put a TV somewhere else, you had to run an extension cord and an outlet strip. And so pretty soon you had cords running all over the place because there was only one outlet on one wall. And in the kitchen, there was no outlet. And so, again, same thing in the bedrooms, one outlet. And so what we realized, and the other thing that was crazy, Rob, was that the door handles, I don't know, there might have been like 5 doors inside the condo. It was a 2-bedroom condo with 2 bathrooms. That's 4 doors, the entry door, maybe a closet or 2, whatever, right? So there were 6, 8 door handles. Like they were all at a different height. And yeah, right? And just like, how is this even possible? Like, I mean, there's a height that all door handles are. It's 32 inches above the floor. Well, I don't know what the metric is on that, right? 80 centimeters or something, right? I mean, this is the height that every door handle in UK and in the US is put in at. But in our condos, they were all different heights. And so what we looked around and we said, you know what? And the countertops, like the bar stools, if you tried to put your knees under the bar at the kitchen countertop, there wasn't enough space. Like you'd bang your knee it's just dumb things, right? And we thought to ourselves, like, this stuff's all free to fix. Like you can't fix it after the fact, right? You can, but it's expensive because now you have to bust out walls and do different things and take doors off. And no, but if you do it right the first time, you drill every door hole at the right height. You put the bar stools, counter at the right height. You add 3 more sockets, 1 on each wall. And, like it's almost free or costs almost nothing. And all of a sudden you end up with a product that's much more familiar and comfortable in what a North American expects when they buy a condo or a home. And so we decided in 98, 99 that we were going to get into the development business and we were going to build a better product for about the same money. I mean, really for the same money, and offer these products to the North American consumer that would meet their expectations. And so we started looking for property in Belize, and I actually wrote an article about it. We looked up and down the coastline of Belize. We toured a bunch of properties. We stomped it. We walked it. And the story ended up, the best piece of property in Belize was 3.5 miles of beachfront in Nicaragua. So we had a friend who was living in Nicaragua at the time, had retired there, and he found this property and said, Mike, Joel, you got to come see this. This is a huge property. It's beautiful. It's an old farm. It's a cattle pasture on the beach, and it's close to Managua, and it'll be a great place for you guys to build homes for North Americans. And so we looked at it, and we thought, yep, this really is a great property. And so we bought it. The price was right. We also understood that not everybody wants Belize. Some people want Caribbean. They want the diving. They want the fly fishing and that kind of stuff. But some people want Pacific Ocean, especially people who live in Oregon, Washington, California, or other parts of the United States. They want the big waves. They want the Pacific Ocean. They want the surfing. They were finding that lifestyle in Mexico and in Costa Rica at the time. But, Nicaragua was so much less expensive from a land perspective that we knew we could offer a product that somebody would pay $250,000, $300,000 for in Costa Rica. We could offer it for half price. And so, again, opening up for more people who couldn't afford $300,000, but also for some people who could afford $300,000 who would say, you know what, I'd rather just buy a bigger house for $300 or save half my money or whatever. So we ended up buying the property in Nicaragua. We rolled out we built a golf course. We put in the first homes, condominiums, clubhouse, restaurant, and we basically took a cattle pasture by the ocean and turned it into a village by the sea. And we've used a village concept. That's our development model. We buy a piece of property and we build a village. And by that, what I mean is we create very pedestrian friendly, walkable communities and neighborhoods so that people, we put in the sidewalks and we pave the streets and we put in first world infrastructure. We actually, it's now it's kind of outdated, but at the time in 2004, we put in the first fiber to the home network in all of Central America. We wanted state-of-the-art telecommunications infrastructure. Now it's all Wi-Fi, but at the time, fiber was the way to go, and we put in the fiber. And so we've created a beautiful little village by the sea, and we have full-time residents, people living there. It's also an operating resort. But you asked about the transition. Again, we knew that we didn't know very much about it, and so we hired lawyers and accountants, and we found Nicaraguan consultants. I guess I would call them that. It was our contact there. Kurt is his name. He introduced us to some people who could really help walk us through some of the bureaucratic challenges. The Civil Law Society is far more bureaucratic than common law, and sometimes you need a lawyer to do it, and sometimes you need a consultant who understands how to really work a system that's very different than what we're familiar with, when to engage the lawyer, when to engage the accountant. And so we put together a team. In 2002, we had done our land planning. We'd hired this firm, Urban Design Associates, that designs along the village concept. We'd hired them. They'd done their land planning. I moved to Nicaragua with my wife and my 2-year-old daughter for what I thought would be, a couple, 2, 3, maybe 4 years to get down there and begin to hire the contractors to come in and put in the fiber optic cable, the water systems, the roads, the sewer system. Again, this was a farm off the grid. We put in all the utilities, the electric. We did all of that. There was nothing there. So we actually put in all the infrastructure and all the services for a municipality. And my role was to get down there, get that started, but then more importantly, as the chief executive officer, to hire a team of people that would actually carry it out, because I thought I was going to be there for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. And so by about 3.5 years into it, we'd hired a chief operating officer who was running the company, dealing with all of the issues. And at that point, I could have come back to the United States. My wife and I, we'd had a second daughter at that point, but we still owned our home here outside of Washington, D.C. And we thought, you know what do we want to go back to the U.S. or do we want to stay here? And we went out to dinner one night. We took a piece of paper and we made a list, 2 columns. We drew a line down the middle of the paper and we said, stay in Nicaragua, go back to the U.S. And over dinner, we just wrote down everything that we could think of for either reason, to stay or go back. And by the end of the evening, it was very clear and very apparent that for many reasons, numerically, lots of reasons, that we wanted to stay in Nicaragua, but also we put stars by the things that were heavy, they weighed a lot, that we cared a lot about. And truthfully, the only thing that got a star on the go back to the U.S. side was being able to see our families more. But then when we started to talk about that and do the analysis, what we realized was we actually saw our families as much living in Nicaragua as we did when we lived back in the U.S., even though they were fairly close by. But the quality of time that we had with our families was far higher, because instead of dropping our daughter off to have grandma and grandpa babysitter while we went out for date night, and we saw the parents for a few minutes on the way in and maybe 20, 30 minutes on the way back. But it was like, bing bang. Whereas when we went back up to the States to visit, or they came down to visit us, there was real quality time. We did things together. We took time off. We enjoyed real quality time. And so for us, the decision to stay in Nicaragua was really easy. And we ended up living in Nicaragua for a total of 14 years and really loved it. And the quality of life, there are so many reasons why we stayed on that side of the page, stay in Nicaragua. But at the end of the day, it really dealt mostly with quality of life issues where, for example, this sounds kind of crazy, but a maid, and you think about a maid, you think, oh, a maid's great. I don't have to do my laundry and I have to do the dishes, right? I have to sweep the floors. And you think that's nice because this thing's, who wants to clean the bathrooms? Who wants to do that stuff? But the reality of a maid, I mean, those are all things that happen, right? But the reality of a maid is that when you don't have to do those things, you end up with a lot more time. And when you have these blocks of time where you don't have to think about doing the chores, you can actually say, well, let's go find a butterfly farm this weekend, or let's go up to the coffee plantation in the mountains and hang out with our friends, or let's go to the beach this weekend, or you know what, we've never been on the Rio San Juan. Let's go explore that this weekend. Or let's just stay home and jump on the trampoline and sleep out on the trampoline on the weekend, because we didn't have any chores. And so having a maid, while it was nice to not have to do those menial things, the real gift was the time that came from not having to do those and being able to choose to spend that time in other ways, and as a family. And so we stayed in Nicaragua because our quality of life went up significantly, and our cost of living was probably half what it would be in the U.S. in any major city. So not only did we have a higher quality of life, it cost less. And Rob, that's really a big driver for people moving overseas, and has been for 50 years. It started in Mexico. The U.S. and Canadians started going to Acapulco and other places like that 50, 60, 70 years ago. And then Costa Rica and Panama, Belize, Nicaragua, and other places, Ecuador. But the driver of that has largely been twofold: a higher quality of life combined with a lower cost of living, which is in and of itself somewhat paradoxical, because normally we think if we want a higher quality of life, we have to spend more money to get it. But in this case, you spend less money and end up with a higher quality of life. And that's moving people. And as we talked about at the very beginning, with the COVID pandemic kind of shaking up some of the foundational elements of work and workplace, and the need to be in a specific place, as more and more people realize that they can work from anywhere and they could have a higher quality of life and a lower cost of living and still do their job and still get paid the same amount of money, but do it from somewhere else where their cost of living is half. This will be a revolutionary time in the real estate, the global real estate industry. We are at the front end of a truly revolution in how people live and what properties they buy, whether domestically or overseas. And it's very exciting. I mean, it's certainly painful. I mean, there's a lot of pain in revolution too, right? I mean, in the computer business, lots of big mainframe companies went out of business. But there were also incredible opportunities and wonderful things that came out of it. So we're right at the forefront of a pretty revolutionary time in the global real estate business as well.
Opportunities are always going to exist no matter what stage of the cycle we're in. So, that's a key thing that people should, I guess a lot of people will understand this already, but if they don't, their opportunities will always exist. It doesn't matter if we're going through the worst recession ever, or, we're part of the best, boom ever. There's always opportunities. I love what you say about time leverage as well, because, getting rid of those menial tasks, as you say, it is great because, yes, it frees up a lot more time, but also from an entrepreneurial point of view, you're also creating employment, because you're then employing, in your example, a maid, where doing all the chores, etc., etc. So it's not just about freeing up more time. That's a great advantage, and that's what people really are after, because that's when you can do your really high income generating tasks, or have more time with the family. And then also, you're creating employment. So you're actually giving back into the very economy where you're situated. And that's a wonderful thing, I think, that people sometimes often oversee, especially. Again, I don't know if it's a British snobbiness thing. We have sort of had this mentality where, I don't know if I should. If I have a maid, I think my friends might look at me and go, why would you do that? That's a bit strange, I say, how posh. You're very posh. You've got a maid. But it's the time that it will give you, and then it's that very time where you can, again, like you said, you can use to have time with your family, or if you're studying even bigger developments or taking time out to go and view bigger developments, which will make you more money. It's twofold, isn't it?
It is. And I like your point about creating employment. I think that is something that people tend to gloss over or forget, especially in developing countries where unemployment is generally pretty high to begin with. And there isn't the kind of social safety nets that we're accustomed to in Europe and in North America. There really is no social security system, or if there is, it's pitiful. So when somebody has employment, it's a major life changer, game changer in so many ways. So right, that the benefit accruing to me as the employer is phenomenal. But the benefit, accruing to the employed is also phenomenal. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Yeah.
And the only thing I would say on top of that as well is that traveling is so important. I'm lucky enough to have been to some of the places you've mentioned. Nicaragua. Actually, I haven't been to Belize, but Nicaragua, Cambodia, those sort of areas. I've been lucky enough to have been to them, and I went traveling as one person, and I came back completely different, mindset-wise, completely different. To realize and understand that what we have, I don't know how you feel about me saying, I don't know if the Americans or people from the United States are the same, but in Britain, I don't think we realise how lucky we are to be born in Britain. I just don't. It's,
we're completely going to go. We're going to go. I'll go off topic. I won't go off topic, but
no, but it's okay. Look, this is fundamental to travel and to overseas experience. I recognize. I mean, I was fortunate to travel as a kid too with my parents, but I have become far more grateful and understand the blessings of abundance that I have because I was born in the United States, you in Britain, Canada, wherever, in the developed world. We are so fortunate and so blessed with the abundance that we take for granted. I think I upset my girls, when they were growing up because, the old refrain, that's not fair. And I would say, you don't want the world fair, honey, because if the world was fair, you'd be living, down the street in a shack with a, plastic bag for a wall. I mean, that's fair. Like, we are so blessed with the abundance we have, and we need to do something positive with that. And quite honestly, look, I'm a capitalist. I'm actually a fairly, I guess, liberal in a British term, libertarian in an American term, but very capitalist oriented. But I don't do my job for the money. I do what I do because I'm passionate about it. I love what I do. It's fun and it's exciting. It's adventurous. But in the end, the significance and the meaning for what I do is the benefit to the people that we work with in the countries that we work in. And it's, and it's not altruistic in any, pure sense. I mean, I'm doing it because I want the client who comes from the United States or Canada or the UK to end up with a home or a condominium that meets their expectations, where they don't have to run extension cords around the wall to have electric, to the other side, or door handles, or many of the other things, plumbing issues. I mean, and again, we're going to talk about these questions that go into a lot of these details another day. And I look forward to that conversation, because, that's truly, this has been a nice theoretical conversation, and we're hitting the high points. But at the end of the day, the rubber meets the road in the details. The devil is in the details. And these 15 questions that we're going to talk about another day are critically important for satisfaction of ownership of property overseas, whether it's Cambodia, Thailand, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Belize, or Namibia. It doesn't matter. When we're coming out of a developed world, the UK, Europe, Canada, United States, we have expectations and we have desires, and we want to make sure they're met. And so, at one level, my service to the consumer is significant and meaningful, because we deliver a product that meets their expectations, desires, and demands. But you know what? We also employ, just under 100. I think it maybe the number's around 70. We've done a few layoffs because of the COVID, but we still, I think, about 70 folks that work for us. I mean, these are 70 families whose lives are significantly better because we are there employing them and providing, all ranges of employment and training and benefits that come with, working for ECI. And so, that's meaningful and significant as well. So yes, we're in business to make a profit, and that's, we have shareholders and we have a board of directors, and that's, fundamentally the company. But we serve a customer, and we're proud of what we do for them. And then, we find significance and meaning, and really honor the blessing and the abundance that we've been gracefully bestowed, because we were born somewhere of abundance. I mean, you didn't pick where you were born. I didn't pick where I was born. I mean, that was just simply grace. And, and to the extent that we can honor that and make a difference in the world, at the same time that we serve a consumer and make a profit, that's a pretty nice package. And I feel very, very, very fortunate that, I've been able to, and the folks in our company are able to do that. So I think the point's right on. I don't think we're far afield on that one, Rob.
So that's good to know, Mike. And great minds think alike. So that's that. You touched upon 15 questions. I just to let listeners know that you very kindly agreed to give up some more time for a little trilogy, a little mini series we're going to be running. So for those listening to the podcast, do check in a few months' time, because that trilogy will be there, and that's going to go into so many nooks and crannies. It's unbelievable. Mike, I'm cautious of time, number one, but I'm also aware that there's going to be people listening to this that are going to be screaming, going, I want to know some numbers. Can you please give me some numbers of a development, just so we know it's possible? Have you got any numbers of one of the bigger developments that you've done, just to appease the appetite of the listeners?
Sure. So, I mean, when you say numbers, you're talking like return on investment numbers or things like that. What help me here?
Yes. So, for example, let's go back to Nicaragua. Let's say, what's the purchase price of the land? How much was the development in total? How much profit was made? Those sort of numbers, just to give people an idea of how achievable this is. Sure.
So, we purchased 2,500 acres, 3.5 miles of beach. The purchase price was, just under $3 million all in, which is incredible. And we spent another, 15, 17 kind of on development, all the roads, water, sewer, electric, fiber optic, golf course, all of those kinds of things. And over the last, decade and a half, 15, 16 years now, we've sold a little over 300 properties, and, and probably 100 of them have homes on them at this point. So again, very well built out. Again, a village by the sea. We have home sites that start around just under $40,000. I think the pound's at about 1.2, 1.3 right now. So what's that? 30,000 pounds or something like that, 32,000 pounds. We have homes, complete homes that are right around $125,000. So, 90 to 100,000 pounds. We have oceanfront condominiums. I mean, this is incredible. Right on the Pacific Ocean, oceanfront condominiums for 140,000 US dollars. So again, 110, 115,000 pounds. So that's Nicaragua. In Belize, we actually have a property that we're just launching. In fact, it just launched. It's a branded product. It's Best Western, which is a pretty big U.S. brand. It's a set of condominiums. The first 16, I think the first 11 or 12 are sold. We've got room to build more buildings. We're going to keep building them. But for example, for $97,000, what's that, about 80,000 pounds, something like that?
About that, yeah.
About 80,000 pounds, you can own a studio condo with the Best Western brand on Ambergris Key. It's not on the water. It's about 2 blocks off the water. So it's an off-water property. But the return on investment is year one around 6.5%, and it ramps up to about 13% by year 10, using a conservative scenario. When I say conservative, what we do is we take the island average for occupancy and average daily rate, and then we just say, look, if all we do is the average of the island, which we do already, so we're good at this. Anyway, this is the kind of return, 6 to about 13. If we beat the average because we're better than the average, and in many cases we are, plus we're branded as a Best Western, again, not outrageous kinds of occupancies and ADRs, like 60% occupancy and an ADR of 125 a night, the ROIs go up to about 9% year one to about 16% year 10. So for people, and actually for Brits, Belize is probably a far easier first step, just like it was for me, 25 years ago, whatever. The first step to go to an English-speaking country, the Queen's on the money. I know you guys like that. So, but it is. It's a Commonwealth country. The contracts are common law. They're all written in English. As a first step for an English speaker, for a Brit, for a U.S., for a Canadian, Belize is an easy first step. And to get there is simple. I mean, boom, you fly to Miami, and you're an hour and a half from Miami to Belize is an hour 35 minutes. So literally one stop in Miami, less than 2 hours later, you're in Belize. And so that probably, if people are listening to this and think, oh yeah, I definitely would like to, take a look at something specific, I would recommend one of the Best Western studios in Belize as an easy first step. For folks who are looking to take a little bit bigger bite, maybe the numbers work. We're actually developing a Marriott on the water, 2 blocks away on the water. Those units start around $400,000, so maybe 30,000 pounds or something like that. Anyway, we can get exact numbers in pounds if people are interested and talk about it that way. But the studio for 85,000 pounds is an easy first step. Belize, English, common law. Probably a place that if you got listeners, folks, want to look at, some details and some more specific numbers, that would be a place to do it. And then let me just mention one other country that we're involved with, and that's Panama. We've been working in Panama since 1999. I planted a teak forest, a teak plantation in 1999. The trees are now, almost 21 years old at this point. And this is a very, very inexpensive investment. A teak parcel, to own a piece of a teak plantation, a baby teak plantation, is $7,000. So what's that, about 6,000 pounds or something? So for 6,000 pounds, you can own a teak plantation in Panama, for an investment of $10,000, which is about 9,000 pounds. So 2 of the baby parcels, you can actually get a residency in Panama. And I know a lot of people want to have a second residency outside their home country. We've had an incredible number of folks from the US and Canada, but also from South Africa. A lot of folks from South Africa looking at this program and getting a second residency in Panama. Folks from England, I don't know what the interest there is, but if there's an interest, certainly we can talk about that. But the teak plantation in Panama, it's a green investment. There's incredible carbon offsets, and it also has a phenomenal return on investment. The $7,000 investment over a 25-year period produces just under $100,000. So we're talking about 11% kind of compounding returns for 25 years. So just one more thing out there that we do. Again, we're involved in Costa Rica as well, but that sort of rounds it out. I know we were going to stay at about 90 minutes, and we're close. So I just wanted to make folks aware that there were some opportunities in Costa Rica and in Panama, and then the teak plantations as well.
That's great, Mike. Thanks for that. And all of those notes will be in, for the benefit of people listening to this on the podcast. All the links and so forth will be in the show notes, so go and check them out. Also, if the book format, just look below for all the information. Mike, just swing this back round, if you don't mind, to a few more sort of nooks and crannies questions, if you don't mind. In terms of finding sites across Latin America, because a lot of people, when they're getting involved in a strategy, they're let's just take London. I know it's a big place, but people will say, well, I'm focusing on North London. It's a very specific area of England. From an international point of view, you've mentioned 3 or 4 different countries there. So how do you find all of these different development opportunities? Or is that through your network? Is someone finding them for you? Or are you out and about finding them yourself? How does that process work?
Yeah, the answer on that, Rob, is all of the above. We've been working in the region for 24 plus years now, and we know a lot of folks, and the flip side of that is a lot of folks know us, and so we receive a lot of emails and phone calls with opportunities of properties for sale. I would say that probably on any given month I get 6 or 8. I don't know. It's 1 or 2 a week. Every week I'm getting people, hey, I've got this property for sale, blah, 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 blah. So the amount of inventory is almost infinite, right? I mean, at some price it probably is infinite, right? I mean, the old adage, for the right price I'd sell anything, right? So I'm sure that, but the deal flow is significant, and when times get tough, it'll pick up. I mean, over the next, I don't know, 8 to 12 to 18 months, right? The next year and a half, I expect the deal flow coming my way to be substantially increased, where I might get 3, 4, 5 a week, starting this summer, because people are going to get desperate, right? They need to sell, they need the money. And so, one of the things we as an organization just did, in fact, are in the middle of doing, and this might be something that would be interesting for some of your listeners, not very many. In fact, probably very few of your listeners would want to look at this opportunity, but there may be a few. We actually offer equity positions in our development company. We don't offer a lot of them. We don't offer them very often, but we're actually doing a fundraise right now to put some money in the bank. I call it the war chest. We're going to stick a bunch of cash in the bank, extra cash in the bank, to acquire 2, 3, 4 more properties over the next year to 2 years during this crisis. We missed that opportunity in 2008, 2009, 2010. We had incredible deal flow. People were coming to us all the time with properties that needed rescued or bought or foreclosed or whatever. We didn't have the cash on hand to acquire them. This time we will. We've already raised a bunch of money. I'd say we're about a third of the way through our raise right now. So if anybody's listening to this, the minimum investment is it's about $88,000. So it's about 75,000 pounds, something like that. So again, it doesn't appeal to everyone, and it's not ownership of property. It's actually ownership of our company. equity in our company. But if there's somebody who's interested in that, and a minimum investment of 75, 80,000 pounds works, please reach out, let Rob know, he'll make an introduction. But at the end of the day, this next, year to 2 years, the deal flow is going to be substantially increased because people are going to be looking to, get out, get rescued. To answer your question specifically, how do we pick? That's a great question. The bullseye for us it's a variable bullseye, but it has a couple levers. A property that's large with no infrastructure and even located away from infrastructure, like our Grand Pacifica project, we had to run electricity from a substation 26 kilometers through the countryside. Like our farm had no electric and no road and no nothing. I mean, it was nothing. It was a farm by the ocean that you could not get to in the rainy season because there was 11 kilometers of mud-soaked road that the only way you could do it was on horseback or being on a tractor. I mean, that was it. There was no way to drive there in the rainy season. And the electric was 26 kilometers away to a substation. And so, but because it was 2,500 acres, you can amortize the cost of public road improvements, running the electric 26 kilometers, putting in a complete infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, fiber, all that stuff. You can amortize it across a large number of acres and make it work. That's one lever. Another lever is a smaller piece of property that's priced higher per acre, but it's on a paved road. It's got water, it's got electric, right? All of a sudden, you don't have to amortize any of those costs because they're pretty much, at site. And so those are what I would call the infrastructure levers. But then there's also what I would call the artistic or very subjective levers, which is the property beautiful, right? And beauty is certainly in the eye of the beholder. I get that. But having done this for 25 years, like I can look at some pictures pretty quick and go, nope, nobody's going to be interested in that, or nobody that's in my marketplace. I mean, I'm sure somebody will be interested, but I know my customers. I know my clients. I spend literally, back before the COVID thing, I was on the road 2 to 3 weeks a month at conferences, at events, at meetings, at conventions, talking to people, listening, asking questions. What are you looking for? What's exciting? What are you thinking? And then having had, literally, at this point, several thousand clients either, buy property from us or, be our guests. In fact, that number is probably well over 10,000 at this point, but about 1,000 folks who have decided to own property with us in some form or fashion, between Belize, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and all of our teak plantations. We have a pretty good sense of, and we have about 100,000 people in our database who read our newsletters, who communicate with our sales team on a pretty regular basis. So we keep our ear to the ground. So when we're looking at property, it has to pass a beauty test, Rob. It has to, we have to look at it and go, yeah, people would want to own here. The view is excellent. The access is, whatever it is. There are some features about the property that make it, exciting in some way. And then the last piece is it developable? And that's sort of a mixture of the art and the science of infrastructure coming together, because anything and everything's developable. It's just how much money do you want to throw at it? So, again, if something's super sexy and super exciting and it's going to cost more to develop it, but yet you can get the premium for the property because it's, right beside a waterfall, or I don't know, making up stuff here, right? Then you might look at that and go, okay, we can justify the extra cost because, we're going to pick it up on the sales side of things. There are just so many factors that go into it that there's no easy one answer, but it's a blend of all of those things, Rob. And my 24 years of experience, my business partner's 24 years of experience, but then a team of people. Many of our ECI team members have been with us for over 10 years, some of them now, 12, 14, 15 years. And so, we've got an incredible corporate intellectual resource that we can bring to bear on certainly on many things, property selection being one of them. But I don't know, that probably wasn't a great answer, but there's no great answer to your question, Rob. It's a blend of a lot of different things. All I can tell you is that over the next year to 2 years, we will see incredible deal flow, and some of those opportunities that come our way will be opportunities that meet those criteria in ways that appeal to the consumer. Look, at the end of the day, let me be really clear. Here's your simple answer. This is it. The simple answer is this. The property must appeal to a consumer. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what my team thinks. It doesn't matter what the seller thinks, right? At the end of the day, it only matters what the consumer, the buyer, thinks. And, we're pretty good at getting that right. We are. Historically, we've proven that. I guess we can't guarantee the future, right? But I think we've got a pretty good sense of what the consumer wants. And that's truly the only opinion that matters, because if they don't buy it, then we don't have a business model that works. So in the end, it's an analysis of, is this something the consumer would want to own and can afford to own, and will make whatever monetary sacrifice they have to make to own it, right? Because money's fungible. I can buy a Lamborghini, right, for $200,000, or I can buy a beautiful oceanfront condominium for $200,000, but I can only do one or the other. So, which do I want more? And so again, understanding what the consumer wants and being able to deliver that is the absolute bottom line in that equation.
No, Mike, that's awesome and really, really insightful. I think there's a lot of lessons that people could take away from the amount of information that you've ploughed through over the last 90 minutes. Let's wrap it up with a few sort of quick fiery questions, if that's okay with you.
And I'll try to keep my answers short, so go ahead.
I've got all evening. You say as much as you need to say. It's absolutely fine. When people approach you about looking to get started in international real estate development, what are the most common queries or concerns you hear from novices about this particular strategy?
That's interesting. Rob, you know what? I don't get approached very much by novices looking to do it. And I don't know why. I think I would be very open to that. But I gotta say, I don't see many people asking me about that. So I don't really have a good question. I don't have a good answer to that question. I think if somebody did approach me, my answer would be this, really simple: small bites, go slow, and then keep your eye on the ball, which is coming back to the answer I just gave, which is what you're about to acquire and develop something that the consumer marketplace needs or wants? What's your unique selling proposition? What's your differentiator? Are you building another condo building that's just like everyone else's? And if so, are you going to compete on price? Are you going to be the lowest price? And if so, what's your advantage on construction costs, right? What is your unique selling proposition? What's your unique identifier? And how are you going to serve the consumer marketplace? If you keep your eye on that ball, and then go slow, do your due diligence, hire experts. I tell you, I think the biggest mistake I see is people have hubris, right? Not humility. They come in with hubris. They think they understand it. They think they know it. They've been a successful business person in the U.S. How hard can this be? I'm just going to buy some property. I'm going to do some development. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, my opinion when somebody has that attitude is have at it, man. But nuance is everything. So humility, small bites, go slow, but always understanding and keeping your eye on the ball, which is the consumer and what you bring to the marketplace that's either missing or not being done well or in some way unique so that you have a place in the marketplace.
That's great. That actually does my next question as well, because I was going to ask, what do you think your sort of top 3 tips would be? But you have just gone through that superbly. So I really appreciate that. What would you say overall the worst piece of advice you've ever been given is?
Wow. I wish you, hey, you know what? Here's a piece of advice for you as a host. Tell me that question at the beginning and let me think about it the whole time. I don't have an answer for you, Rob, but here's what I promise you. When you get me back on the program for the trilogy, I loved your word, the trilogy. That's beautiful. For the trilogy, I will have that answer for you. I've certainly been given bad advice over the years, and I've got some funny stories. And a lot of them have to do with the 15 questions, which we're going to go about, and we're going to talk about in the trilogy. The worst piece of advice. You know what? I can't give you the worst piece of advice, but I'm going to give you a funny mistake I made that sort of goes into the 15 questions. So I was having a house built in Managua after my wife and I decided that we would stay there because we rented for the first 3 years thinking, well, we're not going to be here very long. We're going to rent. So once we decided to stay, we decided to buy a house. Well, we didn't find anything that we liked. So we went to a developer who was building out a little area, and we put an order in for a house, and it was, he was going to build it for us. And so the house is getting built, the house is getting built, the house is getting built. And it's a nice house, and I had 2 daughters at the time, and in my wife and I's bathroom, we had this like jacuzzi tub, right? So we had a shower and a toilet and a sink, and we had a jacuzzi tub, and the tub's drawn on the plans, right? I mean, it's there, and so like we're getting pretty close to the house being done. I mean, everything's in, the windows, and they're painting, and we walk in, and we're walking around with the architect's assistant. Her name is Dora. Walking around with Dora, and we get into our bathroom. And we're looking around, and there's still this giant hole in the ground, and still see dirt, underneath. But I mean, the sinks are in, the faucets are in, the mirrors are in. I mean, like the bathroom's kind of done, except for this hole where the jacuzzi tub's going to be. And I can't remember. I asked, or my wife asked, well, when's the tub coming? When's the jacuzzi tub coming? Dora says, well, when did you order it? And we're like, what do you mean? We didn't order it. It's on the plans. Dora. Brilliant. I mean, great. She's a Nicaraguan lady, speaks great English. She goes, well, no, but it's not included. She said, just like the truck in the driveway, because on the plans, the driveway has a truck drawn on it, right? She says, just like the truck drawn on the driveway, it's not included either. Oh my God, Rob. It's like, wow, right? I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know. We had no clue that we had to order the tub, right? I mean, like in the U.S. or in Britain, probably if you're looking at a tub, I mean, I knew I wasn't getting the truck in the driveway. I mean, right? But like inside the physical house, there's a tub drawn, right? You'd be like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm getting that, but nope, I wasn't. So I'm not sure that's a bad piece of advice, but it was certainly I didn't know what I didn't know. But it's also a good example of I need to forget what I think I know. I came with an assumption, right? I came with this assumption that I was getting a tub because in the U.S. I'd be getting a tub, but there I wasn't. And so anyway, that was the short version of that. But I want to circle back to one other thing that you mentioned, 3 pieces of advice. One of the places where we've seen people be very successful, I mean, a lot of times we talk about mistakes that newcomers make, but let me tell you where I've seen newcomers make really good decisions. And in some cases, it's been self-serving, and I'll be very transparent and disclose that, right? But in other cases, it wasn't particularly self-serving to me. But when you've got a master developer like we are in Grand Pacifica or in other places, we've already run the electric. We've put in the utilities. We've figured out the homeowners association. We figured out how to do business in Nicaragua, right? We have the lawyers. We have the relationships with the municipality, the zoning officers, the environmental department. We've done all that for a long time. And one of the things that I've seen some beginners do, some with us and some with other developers, so again, it could be self-serving, it doesn't have to be, is for someone to come along and say, hey, why don't you let me have 10 acres, 20 acres of property and let me do a development inside your master development, right? So that I can come along and I can build my condos, build my homes, build my off-the-grid neighborhood, whatever it happens to be that's, again, unique. You need to have some kind of unique identifier. Or I want to build a little British neighborhood. I want to put in a little pub, and I want to go and tap my British network and my UK network, because I think there are a lot of Brits who would like to come over and own a beautiful home in Nicaragua for £80,000, and so this is going to be like the Brit neighborhood, right? And I'll put in the pub or whatever, and so somebody who comes to us or comes to another developer with that idea is expressing humility. First of all, I don't know what I don't know. You guys do understand all of these kinds of businessy things in Nicaragua that I don't. It's not that I can't learn them. It's just that it's going to take me time and tuition. I'm going to learn a lot of lessons, but I'm going to pay for those lessons with mistakes, right? Or I can come do something with you as, build a neighborhood. And I've seen this happen in Nicaragua and Costa Rica and Panama. Not so much in Belize, but I've seen it happen in those three countries with us and with my competitors, where people came and became a development partner or a sub-developer inside a larger project. And honestly, Rob, if I was new to the business and I had that option or that opportunity, that's exactly what I would do, knowing what I know today. Again, most people jumping into this just assume they can do it. They don't need my help. They don't need my competitors' help. Right? They can do it. They can figure it out. How hard can it be? But truly, that particular methodology has proven very, very successful for people, because what it lets them do is it lets them do the part of the business they're passionate about. Building the Brit, I'm using this example, a dumb example, I don't know, whatever. Building the British neighborhood with the pub, right? And talking to the people in sales and marketing back in England and the UK, or maybe some Aussies and some Kiwis too, or whoever it is, right? I mean, bringing in the people who have a cultural affinity to this particular property, do the design, do the build. But you know what? They don't have to worry about how to file their taxes in Spanish at the Nicaraguan tax office every 2 weeks. I mean, like, who in the hell wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. I don't even, I guess my accountant probably wants to do it because she loves to do that stuff, right? Thank God I got her, right? But like, me as an entrepreneur, me as somebody like, I have zero desire to do that. And so most people don't either. So that type of a methodology works well for a beginner, because again, they can focus on the things they want to focus on, that they're strong in, they have a core competency, and they don't have to bang their head against all the lessons they have to learn on how to do business in a foreign country. So maybe that's a piece of advice that I would give a newcomer.
That's perfect stuff, Mike. Really appreciate that. And then last couple of questions. Where can you see this strategy in the future? Is development of real estate something that's always going to exist, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And circling back to this idea of a revolutionary time, my feeling is that, we've certainly the demographics work in this favor as well. In the United States, probably in Britain too, the baby boomer generation. I mean, all those kids that were born right after World War II, from 1946 to 1964 in the US. I think it's probably a similar kind of date range in the UK, right? You had all these people coming back. You had, lots of people getting married, having kids. And now these folks are retiring. And there's a 20-year generation that's retiring. In the US and Canada, it's $11,500 a day, every day for the next 17 years. I mean, 11,000 people a day, every day for the next 17 years are retiring, these baby boomers, right? And I'm sure in England and probably around Europe as well. And so as people retire and they don't have as much money as they thought they might have, certainly with the markets down and other things happening, right? Some of those folks are going to be looking for alternative properties, alternative ways to achieve a standard of living, a quality of life that they've always wanted. And many of them are going to look overseas. And England doesn't have great weather. Canada generally doesn't have great weather. The northern parts of the United States, the weather, is kind of miserable much of the year. And so for people looking for warmer, nicer, sunnier weather, look, in Britain, a lot of people are going to Spain and Portugal, and, I get that, right? Because that's easy. It's the same time zone. Flights are, pretty, and friends and family are all there. In the U.S., it's again, same kind of thing. North-south time zones going to Central America and the Caribbean. So this trend is, and I would say it's adolescent, right? It's not a baby trend. It's out of childhood, but it has definitely not hit maturity yet. And I think with the COVID stuff, what we're going to see is not just baby boomers, but the Gen Xers, the Gen Yers, and the millennials adding into this exodus, because they don't have to wait until they retire to move overseas, because now, this proof of concept has been established that they can work from home, and home can literally be anywhere. So I think we're going to see some compounding of the numbers as people take this reality and do something with it. So I think we're in the adolescent stages of this, and we've got a long, long way to go, and before it's matured and beyond. So I'm excited for the next 20, 30 years anyway.
Join the club, me too. Absolutely, it's going to be phenomenal, and it's something we'll look back at, I suppose, with hindsight. Mike, any final words of wisdom, words of encouragement for people listening to this?
Rob, I think what you do is phenomenal. I mean, you provide an incredible service to your listeners, to the folks who are in the industry. A lot of it is about getting information, and not just always the same information. And the fact that you're bringing in people like Mikkel, like me for this. And I might even recommend that you at some point talk to Rachel Jensen, who heads up our TEAC programs for both the residency part, but also the investment part. Again, these ideas that are a little bit outside the mainstream, that, some people will think, we're bonkers, or you're bonkers for even having it on your podcast. But I congratulate you, because at the end of the day, your listeners are very fortunate to have you looking at opportunities that give them the ability to have a breadth of ideas and options, because at the end of the day, it's like a buffet, right? Like, you're not going to go up and pick something of everything, right? We go up and we pick what we want and we leave the rest. And the more options we have, the better the buffet. And so I think you're doing, again, a great service to your listeners, and thank you for having me on here, man.
I appreciate the kind words, Mike. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be able to deliver a wide variety of content for a wide variety of people, to be fair at the end of the day. And that's it's all about adding value where we can. The last thing, and we've mentioned there's going to be loads of links in the show notes, etc. That's absolutely fine. But if people want to find out more about you or ECI Development, how can they do that?
Easy to come to my website, ecidevelopment.com. And what I would ask is, if you've listened to this podcast, just make a note of that. We like to know where people came from, and so just let us know that that you heard about us on Rob's podcast. And in fact, at some point, Rob will probably do some things very specific and special for your listeners. So if you come, you can Cobb, MCOBB, at ecidevelopment.com. That is my email address. And if you want to get on the phone, best thing to do is send me an email and say, hey, Mike, I'd like to get on the phone with you. We'll figure out a time to talk. Time differences, we'll work on that. But reach out. And again, please be sure to let me know that you heard this conversation, and we'll circle back and we'll do some good things for your listeners, Rob.
Absolutely. Mike, thank you very much. And as mentioned before, 15 questions. We'll do that trilogy later on. So listen out for that as well.
Very good.
Cheers, Mike.
Take care, Rob. Thanks.